Hey, welcome to another episode of the Colm Flynn Podcast. My guest today is Jordan Pulmano. Jordan is a talented young filmmaker from California who specialises in filming music videos and music festivals. And I've asked him to come on my podcast to talk about his craziest festival filming experience ever, shooting the infamous Fyre Festival.
The biggest event in a decade, I promise you. I'll be there.
In case you don't know, Fyre Festival was all the hype back in 2017. It was billed as the most luxurious, high-end, glamorous event of the year, filled with top bands from around the world, attended by the most famous supermodels, and with festival goers staying in luxurious villas on a tropical island in the Bahamas. The top tickets for the event were almost $12,000. Long story short, the event was a complete disaster. The organiser, Billy McFarland, was a cowboy. Nothing was ready, the luxurious villas didn't exist, there were not enough toilets, there were no places for people to sleep, the bands pulled out, the caterers too, the whole thing was a scam, and Billy went to jail for 4 years. Jordan was hired to film the festival and flew to the island.
Kind of landing into the island and the sun is setting, looks incredible, the water is perfectly clear. So yeah, at the time I was like, this is going to be insane.
But it soon started to become apparent that things were not as they seemed.
So they're like pairing people up in these rooms because there's not enough space and nobody knows each other.
Until the penny finally dropped that the whole festival was a complete disaster.
That's when I just thought like there were just a lot of weird looks on people's faces. And like the creative agency producers are just like sweat, like you can just tell they're stressed out about something.
This is the Colm Flynn Podcast, and my guest today is Fyre Festival cameraman Jordan Pulmano.
I'm in Fresno, which is like 3 hours north of Los Angeles.
Nice. And what kind of things are you normally shooting? I saw some of your stuff on Instagram recently. It just looked incredible, the stuff that you film.
Thank you. Yeah, I do like a pretty large mix of commercial work as well as I work in the music industry. So I do a lot of touring videography. So essentially I travel with artists and I just film their shows. I also do a lot of music festivals, and so I'll film more on the festival side versus filming with an artist. And between that and the commercial work, it kind of, two totally different worlds, but both equally as enjoyable, I guess.
So when did you first hear of the infamous Fyre Festival?
It was when my buddy sent me a text message, and he just said, hey, I've got this potential job for you. And he sent me the link to the website and he said, check out the festival trailer. This is kind of a look into what we're going to be doing. And that was the first time I had heard of it. And it was kind of like right before, I guess, the hype of it was really like blowing up on Instagram, where people were starting to see, oh, this is going to be a really cool festival.
Everyone saw that promo clip because it was used in the documentaries, but you're talking supermodels, the best supermodels in the world, the beautiful sandy beaches, the jet skis, the yachts, and you were thinking, I'm going to go and film this festival? You must have been thrilled.
Oh, absolutely. And at the time, I had just stopped working full-time for a production company in Los Angeles, and I was fully freelance again, and I was really trying to get into the music industry. But I had only done like a couple music festivals here and there, but I was kind of like learning more and more and kind of getting into the scene. So this was really my first like big music festival I would be filming on my own without the aid of the company I was working for. So yeah, at the time I was like, this is going to be insane.
And it wasn't Billy and his people who reached out to you directly. It was through another company, was it? It was some sort of creative agency.
Yeah, it was a creative agency who was hired by the festival to be put in charge for essentially the trailer that you saw. Our job would be to film a lot of that stuff, cover the festival, and film what in the music festival world they call like an after movie, which they use to promote the festival for the next year. And that was going to be our job. So they had like filming with the models, filming with some of the influencers, and kind of piggybacking off of like that trailer that they had already put out.
But you started to get, or maybe you didn't start to get a bit worried, because I know in the days leading up to it, they hadn't even booked your hotels yet or your flights. So you're talking to your friend saying, hey, this Fyre Festival that everybody's talking about online, and at this point it had blown up. It was going to be the biggest thing ever, but you still didn't know where you were staying. You didn't know what flights you were on. So were you starting to worry before it, or is this kind of normal in your line of work?
For the most part, it's normal, but not to the extent that this was. Usually, I mean, it's not uncommon for like you to get flights 2 weeks before, after, you know, just following up with people and wondering what the deal is. But this was, and I was looking back after I recorded the YouTube video, I was looking back through my emails, and I believe the flights were booked like literally the day before we were supposed to fly out.
No.
But it just got to the point where, like, you know, we have to rent camera gear. You have to pay that money up front. So that's why in the production world, you have to get, you know, a down payment essentially. And so like payments haven't come through. And like we can't lock in rental orders until all this happens. And so it was very, very last minute to where like I was at a festival flying back to LA, and then I was supposed to hop on a flight that night to go to Miami. And that was like me flying home was the time that I finally got all the confirmations of like, okay, we're good. We're going. Here's your flight. Here's like we'll figure out the lodging stuff as we go, blah, blah, blah. So it was definitely crunch time for sure, and we didn't get it until the very last minute.
Whoa. And you're talking about not just the bit of gear. I know from when I lived in New York renting gear, I mean, you're talking thousands and thousands of dollars worth of gear that you had to go in and pay for and pick up and load into an Uber, get to the airport, check it all in. So it's like a big operation. You're not just hopping on a flight with a backpack and going there.
Right. Yeah. This wasn't just, you know, in like when you work for an artist, oftentimes it's just your backpack with your camera and like a little stabilizer for the camera, and you don't really need a lot. But when you're shooting on like a festival side, it's way more produced. It's more of like a commercial operation. So we have motion picture cameras in the sense of like cameras that, you know, people see movies shot on. We have cinema glass, cinema lenses, which are more expensive than the camera themselves. All the little gadgets to be able to like have someone pulling focus so the shots aren't all blurry. Everything, like we had cases, and I want to say like probably close to 10 cases in there. So I was in charge of getting all of that.
Whoa.
And then taking it to the airport and flying it to Miami.
And so you touched down in Miami. You're like, okay, that was a bit stressful, but here we are. We're going. This is on. When did you first start to go, this is a bit strange?
It was pretty much when
getting on that plane in Miami and the little.
Oh yeah, I fell asleep on the plane. It was a red eye. I hadn't slept all day because I was traveling home from the other festival. I wake up with like some weird flu that I was not expecting, and so I land in Miami with like fever, chills, not feeling good at all. And then we had to grab all of our bags from the baggage claim, recheck everything into like this other like terminal of Miami's airport that I've never been to, but it's like their private charter portion of the airport. And so that's where everyone else from the festival was coming in on like the crew side. And so that was like a 3-hour process, at least what it felt like. And then when we were all in this terminal, which was like best described if people travel a lot, like a small regional terminal where there's just not a lot going on in there. There's no Starbucks, there's no lounge, like there's maybe like 3 gates in there. And so we're just sitting there like waiting, and then the flight delays. So I'm getting emails, the flight delays like 2 hours or something like that. And then you just start hearing chatter like, hey, do you have your lodging information? Like, do you know where you're staying? No, I haven't heard. They said they're going to figure it out as we go. So you just start hearing some chatter, and things were just kind of a little off. And then when the plane got there, the plane was not what they told us it would be. Like, they sold us on getting private chartered on like these nice planes onto the island. And these planes were like
something that the Wright brothers would have flown.
Exactly. It was like 3 steps below a Ryanair plane.
Okay.
And like, yeah, it was very, very bad. The seats were so shallow, like they were just trying to fit as many people onto these planes. I don't know if it was like a prison plane or something. I don't know what it was, but like
Guantanamo
it
Bay.
wasn't a plane that should have been in the air. Yeah. It was a very uncomfortable like hour and a half flight for sure.
So then you land, where was it again? What was the name of the place the festival was set? What was the name of the island?
Exuma.
Oh, Exuma, that's right. And
Yeah.
when you're looking out the window, looks beautiful, I presume?
Oh yeah, I have. I think I put it in the video, but I have this Snapchat of us like kind of landing into the island, and the sun is setting. Looks incredible. The water is perfectly clear, and in that moment, I was like, okay, this isn't too bad. Like I'm starting to feel a little better.
And then Jordan, you get off the plane and you go to the buses because it's nighttime. Okay, so where do we stay? Where's the 5-star hotel?
Yeah, they. So we were told we were going to stay in a villa, and like there was a group of 5 of us. I would say from the agency that booked us, there was 30 or 40 people from that team,
Wow.
maybe a little more. But there were like over 100 people at this airport waiting, and we're like, okay, where's our villa? Like, where are we staying? And they're like, oh, we don't have all the villas ready. They haven't given us any of the information, and so we're gonna go to like the home base where I don't know whose headquarters it was, if it was the marketing team that hired us or if it was like the actual festival's marketing, like HQ. So we load up in those school buses that, the same ones that were in the documentary, and they shuttle us all to this villa, which was like maybe a 2,000 square foot home.
Okay.
And there's a line out the door, and they're like, hey, we're going to feed you dinner. We're going to figure out like everything. So we had to get all of our stuff off this bus. So imagine luggage all over this front yard. There's a line out the door. We get in a line for food, and it's just like, ragu with penne pasta, just like the most cheap pasta meal that you can make just a lot
Look,
of.
who's making the food? Because I know the caterers backed out at the last minute. Was there like just a mom and
It
pop?
wasn't anyone a part of the team. I think it was like whoever was a part of the team there. I think it was a part of the company that hired us, because they were in the same position as far as like they're not in the know of anything, but it's on them because they're trying to take care of the people that they hired.
Yeah.
So I think that was their way of just like, let's get people fed. And then they were saying like, oh, you can stay at this house, but there's like 100 people at this house that's not big enough for like 10 people to stay at.
Oh.
And so we're just like, we can't stay here. There's no way.
And so I'm picturing this, it's late in the evening. And when you're talking about all these people, I mean, these aren't the punters, the festival goers. This is just crew and people working at the festival. So what happens then? You realize we can't all fit in the villa. Night is setting in. Where are you going to sleep for the night?
Yeah. So we finally got word that our like core team, which was, it was either 30 people or 80 people. It was just a lot of people. They basically said, hey, we got a cruise ship that's kind of docked out for the night. It's in between cruises, so it's got a bunch of hotel rooms on it. We're just going to stay on the cruise ship and figure this out. We got it. Like the plan was to start filming that next day, just some like pre-festival stuff. And so they take us back onto the school buses out to this dock. It's like, I want to say like midnight at this point, or maybe like 1 a.m. It was very late. Everyone's exhausted. And it was just a pitch black boat dock, and out in the distance were like these very faint like tungsten lights, just looked like a boat kind of out in the distance. And we're just sitting there waiting like, okay, what's the plan? Where's the ship at? Like, it's got to be a pretty big ship, right? And they're like, no, that's it out there. Like, they're like pointing to it. And I'm like, that's the ship? This is not a cruise ship. And what it was is like, I called it like a bingo hall cruise ship because that's the only way I could describe it. But there's like cruise ships, and then there's these, it's called like a Grand Mariner or something, which is basically like you can privately book it for, like 100 people to stay on. So there's like cruise ships are this big, and this thing was about this big. But there's hotel rooms in it. There's like one big like auditorium type room, and then there's like, a rooftop type thing, very small. So we just start shuttling out there on like these little dinghy boats. And I mean, you can't fit many people whenever you're trying to get luggage out there and then like a bunch of people. So luckily I was on one of the first ones. So I'm like in and out, in and out. There were already people on the ship kind of checking in. And it was just like so chaotic in there. Everybody's like trying to get their room. And then someone from our team comes out and he's like, there's a lady in my room. And they're like, yeah, that's the room you're staying in. And he's like, I'm not staying in this room. He's like, do you think my wife's going to like me sleeping in a room with some random lady I don't even know? So they're like pairing people up in these rooms because there's not enough space and nobody knows each other.
Oh,
and
no.
so there's like, it's just a chaotic scene. And luckily, like, I was able to get into a room with one of the guys from our team. So like him and I knew each other, and it was just madness. So we finally like went to bed, and it was just like, okay, at least we have somewhere to stay. Whether this thing sinks overnight or not, at least I have a bed to die in. You know?
If this is a Titanic, you're like, at least I have a bed. But are you thinking now
Exactly.
at this stage, Jordan, this festival of the century is looking a bit iffy right now? Are you still holding hope?
I'm still holding on to hope at this point. I was like, I'm not foreign to terrible travel days and like logistics.
You know what? You're the right kind of person to have on the crew. You're the optimist.
And this is, mind you, it'd probably be a little different now, but like this was when I was very green. So like I was just excited to be there. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt until like the absolute end of the day. Now I probably would have been a little more bougie about it just because, you know, I've done more things and like I have more preferences as far as like travel and stuff. But back then I was just like, I'm just stoked to be here.
So you wake up and the boat has drifted 400 miles off course, and you're you're thinking. So what happens? You wake up and you're with the crew, and you're just kind of sitting around in the boat waiting for word, isn't that right? Because you're meant to start filming straight away, getting the models coming in and whatever, getting off the private jets and all that. So you're waiting for the
So that was going to be the next day, but the day that we woke up on the boat, we were supposed to just go out and like film the festival being set up and like, you know, filming some scenery shots and stuff. And so we get up, we get breakfast, and it's all in this one like auditorium type room that they are just like threw up a bunch of tables and had everybody eating breakfast in there. And they basically told us like, hey, we're going to plan on leaving the boat here at like noon. It was probably 8 or 9 a.m. We're going to go like around noon, and we'll go film for like 4 or 5 hours or whatever it is. So we go back to the room, and then of course we get an email, or maybe it was in a group chat, which I wish I still had. It's like this group chat that had everything in it. And they said, hey, filming's been delayed for the day. They need more time setting up the festival. Sorry, eat lunch here and kind of chill on the boat, and we'll keep you posted. So we do that, eat lunch, just kind of like hang around and wait. And then they told us, hey, we're not filming today. Filming needs to be pushed an entire day to give them more time to set up. Also, we can't stay on the ship anymore. And so everybody's like, huh?
Why couldn't you stay on the ship? Why were they kicking you off the ship?
I think what happened was there was either too many people on it, or the ship had to go to like another thing that it was
do ship
for.
Things. Had to sail away.
Yeah, they had to sail away. So at that point they were like, all right, new plan. We're going to book a resort in Nassau, which I believe is the pronunciation of it, which is the touristy island of the Caribbean. And some of the team, we're going to stay there. We'll get shuttled in by like a puddle jumper airplane every day into the festival, and then we'll go back there. And so we're like, okay, who's going to do this? And there's 5 total people on like the camera side, right? 3 of us were like, okay, we'll go stay on this island. And I think it was the director who hired us. I think he was the one who was like, okay, you and you go. I'm going to stay here with the other person, and we're going to, we have to stay with this gear. We can't fly all this gear in and out every day. So they're like, we'll stay, we'll wait till we get our villa, and we'll just hang out here. So 2 of them stayed behind. 3 of us get off the ship, hop on this little puddle jumper, which was like even more terrifying than the first plane that got us onto the island. Literally one of the seats was like not even there. It was like totally broken. So we go to the touristy island, Nassau. We get checked into this beautiful resort, and we're like, okay, this is great. Like, this is all right. I'm not going to complain about this at all. All inclusive, eat, drink, whatever you want.
Wow.
And so we all went to dinner that night.
It's important to point out as well, Jordan, that this was all the creative agency, wasn't it, that was looking after you because you're the subcontractor.
Exactly.
This isn't Fyre Festival who are actually then putting you in the ship or then putting you out in this beautiful resort. This was the agency that you were working for. So you guys were actually some of the lucky ones in comparison to some of the festival goers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, their team from day one was just trying to like make sure that we were good at the expense of themselves, which sucks to see. And I don't know any of the details of like what the aftermath of any of that. But yeah, they were like, we got to make sure the crew that we hired can survive out here.
Yeah.
So yeah, they booked a beautiful resort. They got us there and they basically just said like, get a good night's sleep and then we'll fly you in tomorrow because that's the day, that evening is when people are going to start arriving for the festival. We go to bed that night, we wake up the next morning, go to breakfast, everything's looking good. They're saying, hey, we're going to plan on leaving here at like 9 a.m. Let's get ready, whatever. And then again, we get an email. I'm so sorry, but filming's been canceled today. Not even like a, hey, let's push a little bit. It was just like, we're not filming today. We don't know what's going on, but it's not ready yet.
And Gordon, had you heard of the name Billy McFarland before? Had you looked this guy up, or did you know anything about the guy who was behind this festival?
No chance. No, I mean, I knew who Ja Rule was.
Yeah.
But no clue who Billy McFarland... Like, I didn't really do much research into the festival overall. I just looked at the, you know, the bullet points of the website and like watched the videos and stuff like that. So
yeah, I suppose
oftentimes like
it doesn't take,
I don't really do much research on it.
Yeah, it doesn't take deep research for it was a festival. It was sun, sand, sea, and lots of models thrown in. So I mean that's the brief.
I was sold. I don't need to know anything else. Like I'm good. But
this is the day before everyone's meant to be arriving. So the thing kicks off the next day.
This is the day of.
Oh, this is the day of.
Yeah, the day of people are supposed to arrive. They're supposed to arrive, and then the festival starts the following day.
Okay.
So,
but you need to get your establishing shots and the people arriving, the models getting off the planes, all those things that go at the start of those promo videos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the plan for that day. And I had felt a little weird when we were getting off the boat, going to Nassau so when we left the cruise ship, kind of that same like sun setting, it's beautiful. We drove past the festival grounds and that was the first time that I saw like the FEMA camp situation and didn't really think much of it other than like, ooh, they have a lot to do. Like the stage isn't set up or anything.
Whoa.
So that was the first time where I was like, I don't know.
Were you guys talking about it when you were sitting having drinks at night at the bar in that hotel? Were you saying, you know, I saw that place today. The campsite doesn't look ready for these thousands of people and that stage wasn't even put up. Were people getting texts saying, look, I think this might be a complete and utter disaster?
At that point, there was definitely concern. Like the crew that went to the resort were like, this is weird. Like things just keep getting pushed or whatever. But the talks really started that next day when they just canceled the entire day of filming and everyone who was at the resort, they just said, go have a good day at the resort, go drink, do whatever. Like we're not working today. So that's when people started like thinking this is like bizarre that we're now like 2.5 days of not even working yet since we've been here.
And you're feeling guilty too because you're getting paid by the day. So, I mean, you're like, I want to shoot something. I want to get something on tape at least.
Exactly. You know, we had like so much cool camera gear that, you know, if you are into like video production, you just want to play with the toys. You know what I mean? So like to just have that camera gear sitting in your room in a case, you're just like, man, I want to like do something with this. I don't want to just be sitting here. I want to be working.
So day of people arriving, and while you're on the resort on a neighboring island in a beautiful place, meanwhile, the public, all these people who have spent thousands of dollars, like thousands, they're arriving on planes. It's starting to dawn on them when they see the tents they're meant to be staying in, the supposed villas. Obviously, that started to trickle out on social media. So towards the evening, did it start to set in for you guys that this actually might not be happening at all? When did the penny drop?
Yeah, it was in the evening. So like sun setting, and I get a text in the group chat, I think it was like, hey, the whole crew is hanging out at this bar. And so I went up to the bar and that's when I just saw like there was just a lot of weird looks on people's faces and like people just buried in their phones and like the creative agency producers are just like sweat, like you could just tell they're stressed out about something. And so everyone starts, hey, did you see Twitter? Did you see Twitter? And so that's when I went on Twitter, and that was like right after they, I think it was before the sandwich post, but it was when Twitter started like picking up traction that there was something going on with this. And then within that time, they posted the sandwich and it blew up. And I started getting like, that's when it started hitting like the news cycle and stuff. And I started getting like calls and texts from my family who are like, hey, are you good? Because I know you're there. And that's when I knew like, oh, like more than just people who are into music know about this right now. And that you could just see like panic across the entire group of people who were at the bar at that point.
But the problem is all of your expensive camera gear is still back on the island, on the Fyre Festival island. It's still on that boat.
Exactly.
Is it? It's still on the cruise ship.
So that night was, I believe, when they had to get off the cruise ship. And at that point, they had no place to stay. And so like we had, a separate group chat with just the camera team. And we're like, what's going on? Are you guys okay? What's happening? And it was just kind of chaos throughout the night. And Chris, my buddy who hired me for the festival, was just like kind of giving us updates. And he would like call me and give me an update. And then I heard this story. I don't know if it was him who told us or not, but essentially what they had to do is they had all the gear like on the side of the road essentially. And this bus came by and they had to stop the bus, and they kicked like everybody who was on the bus off. Like there's a bunch of like festival goers or something. They were like, hey, you need to get off here so we can put this camera gear in here. And they made that bus like drive them to a villa or something. And they, I guess, found a bunch of keys to the villa or something, like just a key ring full of keys. And so they went to a villa and were able to get into one. I don't know any other details about that story other than like it just sounded like chaos. I was just getting these texts while we're at this island. And I'm like, oh my God, like they're fighting to survive right now in this like chaotic Mad Max situation.
Whoa. And the guy as well, Billy McFarland, who organized the whole festival, and he was it was his brainchild. There's that famous video of him in the documentary where he's standing on a bench, and even at the last minute when it is so obvious that the whole thing has fallen apart and it is not only a complete and utter disaster, but it's been a complete scam as well, and people have lost so much money and they're gathered around him, but he's still trying to maintain some sort of calm. And he goes to the DJs in it and he just says, turn up the music as loud as you can. So there was these stories of this deafening, thumping music going across the island when people were strolling around looking for somewhere to sleep. But were you then hearing the name Billy McFarland, or were there clips going around of him? Was he the villain then, or were people just trying to survive?
Yeah, I don't think nobody knew what the scale of this was, other than like it's picking up news traction and it's all over Twitter. But I don't remember seeing anything as far as like the people putting on the festival. I don't remember hearing from like the marketing team that hired us anything about like the people who hired us are sketchy, or like I don't think anyone truly knew anything. Like it was just like chaos and trying to figure out where the stem of this chaos is coming from, but there were just no answers.
And so the next day comes, and this is the first day of the festival. So you've missed the pre-production days or the getting the setup shots, but this is the first day you're meant to be shooting the music, shooting people having a good time. So what happens when you wake up?
So we woke up after we were out pretty late that night. Like a lot of the team was just kind of like, let's just, drink this one off. And so we woke up to another like group chat message like, hey, let's all meet up for breakfast, and we're gonna kind of have a chat then. And so at breakfast, that's when they told us like, hey, the festival is for sure not happening. We're gonna book everyone's flights today to get back to Miami, and then we'll get you home after that. So that's when we like fully knew, like in that morning, we're not doing this festival. So our flights were booked out for like the evening. So we had like another day just to kind of hang out and chill, and also figure out where the rest of our team was at, and like how they were gonna get off the island essentially.
Yeah, how did you guys get off the island? Because everybody needed to get off the island and everyone was trying to book flights. And so how did you guys manage to escape?
So the two guys from our team that were there, the ones who were just like surviving, they and my friend who hired, he's always just like been this crazy savvy person who can just figure things out. I think it's what makes him a great producer and a director. But he started hitting up everybody on like Facebook and was like, I need a private plane to come from Miami and pick us up, because there's no chance they're getting on those charters. Like on the documentary, you know, everybody's at the airport trying to get off the island. They're like, there's no way we're going to get off this island. So they were able to manage to find a private pilot who owns a Cessna to fly to the island and pick them up. So the three people who were in Nassau, including myself, we took a little American Airlines flight. It was no big deal. They met up with this guy at the Exuma airport, and they load everything up, and it's the evening at this point, and they're just waiting to get off the island. They're like, okay, thank God this happened. And they're waiting in front of all the other charter planes, right? And the sun's going down, and it's finally their time to hit the runway and go up. And they have it on camera. I put it in the video. The pilot basically turns around and is like, they're not going to let us take off, because once the sun drops below the horizon, like, you can't do night flights here. Oh. And I don't know if that's an aviation thing or like an airport or country thing, but they essentially missed their window to get off the island and had to get off the plane. So now it's the two camera guys plus the pilot who flew down there to pick them up, having to stay in that villa another night until the morning when they could get off the island. So they got stuck there another night.
How did you feel? Did you feel hard done by in that you had lost the gig? You had lost the opportunity to film at this beautiful festival? Did you feel excited to be there when like something big was going down and happening, and you weren't really in the you-know-what show, but you were close to it in a nice 5-star hotel? I mean, how were you feeling? Were spirits still good?
Yeah, like at the time, obviously I didn't know anything other than our situation. So like I just thought of it as like kind of a funny story. Like, oh, we're just here at this island, paid vacation, like very high spirits still. I did feel bad for like the team who hired us because they were visibly like stressed about it. But for me, I didn't think anything other than like, this is just like kind of a funny situation that happened to me. And it wasn't until like the documentary came out and like time had passed where I really learned the severity of what happened. And that's where like, a little more of the guilt comes in, where you're like, oh man, I really, really had it good compared to these people. Because I mean, so many people lost so much over that.
Yeah, they lost a lot. But I mean, that's not your fault. You were there to work and to do a job, and you were just doing what you were told. But did you film anything, by the way, across the whole entire couple of days you were there? Did you press record on your camera once?
The cameras that we brought to film, they never left those cases once. So the only videos and stuff that I have were from my phone. I took a bunch of Snapchats that like I never saved to my phone because I kept going through trying to find them. But I have like a couple clips from my phone that I had kind of recorded throughout the day. And this was before, I did anything on social media or like any YouTube stuff like that, because otherwise I would have probably vlogged the entire situation, and that could have been very cool. I mean,
looking back,
my buddy did record everything. He had, at the time, the Snapchat glasses were like the thing. And so he had like all these Snapchat videos of, he would just record it and just be looking around and had like the POV of his whole scenario.
And did you lose out in it? I mean, did you get paid in the end, or did you lose out as well?
No, I got paid for the time I was there, which was again, the company that hired us was like really looking out for everybody. So they, pulled everybody aside and were just like, hey, okay, so you flew in this day, we're going to fly you home this day. Are you okay with taking this rate as opposed to, the full project rate? Obviously, like traditionally you would get the kill fee, which would be like the entire project at like such short notice. But they're just like, we can pay you this and that. Does that seem fair for you? And it was one of those things where I was like, hey, that's fine. Yeah. I'm not going to question or push back on anything, because like I know you have your hands full, and I know that they had to have paid us out of pocket for that.
Yeah.
And
because they didn't
I don't know
get
anything
paid.
Other than like,
yeah, I'm guessing they didn't get paid.
I can't imagine they did.
Because I mean, I can't imagine they did. He got jailed, Billy McFarland, And
Yeah.
it's and that's good because you hear so many companies, especially in media and video production, who say, "Well, we'll pay you when the client pays us," kind of thing. And then if they don't get paid by the
Yeah.
client, they just go, "Well, what can we do?" Whereas in reality, they're the ones who hired you.
Exactly.
Billy McFarland he's out of prison now, and I don't know if you've been following this, but he's talking about doing Fyre Festival 2. And he said
Yes,
this one will
that's
be
the
a
whole
success.
reason why I posted that video on YouTube.
Why?
Because I heard about it.
You want to go and film at the second Fyre Festival?
I think I'm probably busy that day. Otherwise, I mean, yeah, I think I'm going to stay clear away from that. But it also could sadly be a massive success.
But that's the
just
thing.
Because of the novelty of it.
Because of how infamous it's become and the novelty of it.
Yeah.
I mean, if they said to you, if a good old boy Billy and his crew said, "Look, Jordan, we'll pay you up front. You have the money in the bank. Come back to the island and we'll give this another shot." Would you be tempted to go and just to say, "Guys, I'm here at Fyre Festival too, and it's going great"?
Yeah, I think if all the stars aligned and like everything was in the account, I had the confirmation numbers and I had an exit plan just in case. I think I'd probably go. Yeah, because I mean, I would want to see that. I want to see like what it is. I also feel like they'd be missing out on an opportunity to not do like a Disneyland ride type of situation where they're like, "Hey, if you want to experience how it didn't happen, go to this thing." You go on a school bus and they take you around the island and reenact some of the things.
That's an idea.
I think that could be a good idea.
But you know what? It's funny, Jordan, because your country, the United States of America, is probably one of the only places in the world where this story can happen, in that someone tries something like this and by hook or by crook, they go for it, and their ambition is so much bigger than what they can actually pull off in reality. And they can go to prison and they can come out and they can say, "Guys, I'm going to go and do that again." And there's a certain amount of people who are rooting for him and who want to see it happen. And
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what do you think of that? The whole thing of like another chance and having another stab at it. The American dream.
I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's all like, it's him trying to capitalize off of his mistake. And, if he were to come out and be like, "Hey, any profits that we make from this or a certain amount, we're going to put towards this, or like put towards the community," all this stuff. Like if there was some sort of like philanthropic thing, which I know there's no way it would, then that could be it. But I think people in the States especially, they love like a story like this. They think it's so fascinating to be involved in this like real life villain type situation. And every villain, every serial killer has a fan base. And so I think like, I don't know, people in the States just love that stuff. And so he'll have the supporters, he'll have the people who are going to do it for clout, who will go simply for the fact that it's Fyre Festival and they'll know they'll get clicks for it. The same reason I posted it on YouTube, always to get views, right? So like people are going to eat it up.
Well, you might not know this is a little exclusive, but the last time they had all the models booked, I can tell you that my friend Sham, who you have seen before with his beautiful Irish accent, he has been booked for Fyre Festival too. So if that,
I love that. I love that.
We spoke about this before we set up this interview. When I reached out to you, you said, "Oh, I saw your interview with Sham. He's the guy with the strongest Irish accent in the world." Did you understand anything he said?
No, not a chance. And the whole time I saw the video, I was just blown away that you were just responding to him. Because I'm like, how do you, like, is there something we're not seeing here? Because like you would just like say things and it was a correct response to what he was saying. And but me being an American who lives in California, which has the most vanilla accent in the world, like I couldn't understand anything.
That's funny. A couple of pints of Guinness and Jordan, you and Sham would be on the same wavelength and you'd be talking like two scholars.
Yeah, I mean, that's my Tuesday night. That's how I sound sometimes. So I got to give it to the guy. He just sounds like he's having a good time.
So he's coming to the next Fyre Festival. And hey, Jordan, listen, so good talking to you. And thanks so much for reliving the drama of Fyre Festival. Like you, me, and so many people will be watching Billy to see what he does next and what Fyre Festival 2 is like. So let's see, maybe the next time we talk, you'll actually be there on the island again. Who knows? Stranger things have happened.
Yeah. I'll be reporting on location for you.
Jordan, thanks so much.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.